One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing actions matter more than patterns. Anyone can have a bad day. Anyone can say the wrong thing once. But psychology tells us that repeated behaviors reveal far more than isolated moments. When someone repeatedly pushes your patience, questions your reactions, or ignores your emotional boundaries, they may not simply be acting carelessly. They may be observing how much you are willing to tolerate. There are 7 behavioral patterns psychology tells us to pay attention to. They repeatedly cross small boundaries. People rarely begin by violating major boundaries. Instead, they start with small ones. They interrupt your time, ignore simple requests, or continue behaviors you've already expressed discomfort with. Psychologically, small boundary violations are often used to measure resistance. If there are no consequences, the person learns that your limits are flexible. Emotionally, this behavior shows they are paying attention to what you allow, rather than what you say. It often reveals a mindset focused on gaining more control over interactions, instead of respecting mutual boundaries. 2. They dismiss your feelings as overreactions. One common emotional test is making someone question their own emotional responses. When you express discomfort, they immediately respond with phrases like, "You're too sensitive," or "You're making a big deal out of nothing." Psychology recognizes this as a way of shifting attention away from their behavior and toward your reaction. The emotional message is clear. Your feelings become the problem instead of the behavior that caused them. This often reveals someone who values maintaining control over taking responsibility. 3. They alternate between warmth and distance. Inconsistent behavior creates uncertainty. One day they are supportive, attentive, and kind. The next day they become distant, cold, or emotionally unavailable without explanation. Human psychology naturally seeks consistency. When consistency disappears, people often invest more emotional energy trying to understand what changed. This emotional unpredictability keeps attention focused on earning the person's approval. It may reveal someone who understands that uncertainty can increase emotional attachment and dependence. 4. They watch your reaction more than the situation. Sometimes the event itself is not their main interest. They make a sarcastic comment, ignore a message, cancel plans, or make a subtle criticism, and then carefully observe how you respond. Behavioral psychology suggests that reactions provide valuable information about someone's emotional tolerance. The stronger your emotional response, the more information they gain about your triggers. This often reveals curiosity about your emotional limits rather than genuine concern about the issue itself. 5. They keep raising the standard. At first, the requests seem reasonable. Later, they ask for more of your time, more patience, more understanding, or more emotional energy. Each new expectation becomes slightly bigger than the last. Psychologically, gradual escalation works because people adjust slowly without noticing how much has changed. Emotionally, this pattern can leave someone constantly trying to prove their value. It often reveals a mindset that continuously expands expectations once previous demands are accepted. 6. They ignore accountability but expect understanding. Healthy relationships include responsibility on both sides. However, some people consistently expect forgiveness while avoiding accountability for their own actions. They explain away every mistake, justify every decision, and expect others to understand their circumstances. Yet when someone else makes a mistake, they become highly critical. Psychology recognizes this imbalance as a sign of unequal emotional expectations. It reveals a mindset where empathy is expected but not equally returned. 7. They become uncomfortable when you stay calm. One of the strongest emotional tests involves your reaction under pressure. Some people expect frustration, arguments, or emotional outbursts. When you remain calm, respectful, and emotionally steady, they often become unsettled. Why? Because calmness removes the emotional feedback they were expecting. Psychologically, emotional regulation makes behavior much harder to manipulate. It reveals that your emotional stability limits the influence others can have over your decisions. Looking at these 7 behaviors together, a larger pattern becomes clear. People who test emotional limits are rarely focused on a single moment. They pay attention to consistency. They observe what you tolerate, what you excuse, and how you respond under emotional pressure. Psychology reminds us that understanding behavior is not about assuming the worst in people. It is about recognizing patterns before they become habits. The more aware you become of these emotional signals, the easier it is to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting automatically. Self-awareness is one of the strongest forms of emotional intelligence because it allows you to protect your boundaries without unnecessary conflict. If this helped you understand people on a deeper level, subscribe for more psychology content.